Welcome to Astro Chat with Anne Sundell Kimberly Williams and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back for another week of Astro Chat. Today it is myself, Kimberly Williams, and Anne Sundell joining you to talk about the upcoming full moon in Taurus. This is going to be happening November 15th at 3:27 in the afternoon here in the central time zone of the United States. Across the pond in England, I think that is 9:27 in the evening. In Finland, 11:27 that night. As always, feel free to transfer the chart to your time zone and your location so you can follow along. A few items of note that we may see happening in the 2 weeks from this full moon until the next new moon, not all of which are we going to be able to cover today. On the 15th, very close to that full moon energy, Saturn has stationed and is direct. Later on the 26th, Mercury will be going retrograde, so we are in the pre-shadow already. And on the 19th, the infamous Pluto final ingress into Aquarius will be happening. And on the 21st, of course, the sun is going to move into the sign of Sagittarius. I guess we should start off by talking a bit about the Sabian symbol.
This time it's interesting because we have a moon at 2400. So then I'm not going to round down or up the Sabian symbol. We're going to read 24. And this says, a warrior riding fiercely, human scalps hanging from his belt. It's quite a harsh one this time. It's a very strong quote. And I think it talks a lot about our basic instincts, and some of them may be about aggression, about some hard feelings to deal with. And this is like a symbol that's related also to violence.
The image that popped into my head, totally different culture, but the image that popped into my mind was the very stereotypical images of Kali. And that idea of the corpses and the heads like hanging from her waist, this idea of death and endings, but with a bit of a force to it. This idea of the anger that something needs to finally end. Another idea is the anger we sometimes have when we go to battle, when we make things end, when we have that finality of death with that final kind of blow. And it's not just enough, I have overcome, I've conquered my enemies. I have to symbolically do something as well. That energy doesn't dissipate with the victory. It lingers even beyond. I don't know, but I just felt like this is intensifying for me some of the passionate aggression, as you were saying earlier when we were talking, that I feel layered throughout the chart.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in this chart, we have a lot of that. And it's important to think about how we can work with that. It's a lot of energy also. And how can we work with that instead of maybe seeing the enemy and more looking into how we can use the force of wars.
Good point. And this passion is much about the emotion of anger, of violence, of aggression, right? That energy can also be directed into movement, into passion, into vitriol, into we're going to make something happen. If we're able to bring our conscious awareness and kind of shift it, reframe things. But I think that, like you were saying, this feels like a very pure red color, not a nice muted toned color, where I think a lot of what we're angry about might be getting fixated and focused. And so it could be that momentary, the cork is popping off the bottle as we ride the wave.
Yeah, and with projecting our anger onto wherever. So we need to be careful with that.
Especially since it's a full moon, seem to be more potent times where it's easier to fall into projection. If I'm angry at my politics of my country, if I'm angry at my family, if I'm angry at a boss, it's easy to project that to the person in front of me that I'm now angry at and take all that emotion and put it out here instead of where it belongs. I think being aware of what we are upset with and who we are upset with, and having clarity and not necessarily letting it just run rampant could be really useful during this lunation and the weeks following.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, a little more positive. Let's talk about the moon in Taurus. Then we'll come back to look at some of those aspects that repeat the aggression theme. We deviate for a moment. A moon is happiest, you might say, when it's in Taurus. The moon can vibrate at its highest vibration. When the moon is in Taurus, often it's easier to manifest what we are visualizing, what we are desiring. When the moon is in Taurus, sometimes it's easier to bring stability to our emotional needs, desires, yearnings. Instead of being just nostalgic about the past or going down memory lane like the moon can do, we may actually plant our feet and think about what we want to grow, be planting, nurturing, tending. I think of tending as a word that to me feels very appropriate to the Taurus energy. Right? Taurus, of course, is a fixed earth that likes to take its time. The moon in Taurus could be lending a little energy of maybe we need to slow down for just a moment, not run wild like that Sabian symbol is implying, but take a moment, slow down, come up with a plan, do things in a very orderly 1, then 2, then 3, first foot, take it one step at a time kind of energy. I think Taurus also moons tend to innately draw us in touch with what we value, either about ourselves, about our life, about our family. Of course, looking at our natal charts to see what house the Taurus energy resides in could be very useful in seeing how this moon is going to be touching these energies and opening these energies. But something about really needing to feel valued, which means we could get upset or angry if we're feeling devalued just as easily as we may put extra energy into those people, those things that we feel deeply connected with, that we do value about ourselves or about life. What are your thoughts about how to be working with the Taurus?
I think the Taurus moon is good here because it contains a lot of patience and possibility to really, like you said, take it slow or to let things have their time and feelings have their time, and also to connect with the here and now and where you are right now and with your body and what you need, and also maybe to enjoy yourself a bit and self-care and just ground yourself. And especially if there's a lot of feelings or turbulence, then you can reconnect with the base for yourself and try to be focused, and also to focus on what's your goals and think about them and think about how you can use energy to initiate or go forward, but still doing it step by step.
All good points. All right, let me pull up the chart real quick and we'll take a look at some of the aspects that are happening, and then you and I can dive in, and as Monica would always say, we can talk about the soup of aspects we see happening. Give me one sec. Here, I've highlighted just the aspects happening to the luminaries, right? The sun and the moon. Of course, being the full moon, the sun and the moon are opposite. And notice the moon is conjunct Uranus, very close, within 1 degree. And although it's not on here, you and I were talking earlier, there's also the fixed star Algol 1 degree away from that Uranus, adding its energy for people who work with fixed stars. The moon makes, in addition to making a conjunction with Uranus, it makes a sextile to Neptune, it makes a trine to Pluto. It's talking to all 3 of the outer planets, which to me feels a lot like a call from the universe, if you will, to step up our game, a call to evolve, to really work on our collective development. And then that sun also is making a sextile to that Pluto and then the trine to Neptune. They're both locked in with the same energies. I've also got one more chart that shows some of the aspects happening with the others. Let me pull that up, and then Anne, you and I can start to unpack it. We may want to pay attention to the fact that the Venus, being the dispositor of that moon in Taurus, is making a T-square to the nodal axis, and then has a sextile, which normally would be harmonious. However, it's to the asteroid Juno, Black Moon Lilith. Again, I'm thinking this is focusing our energy, our passion, and it feels a little volatile, if you will. Jupiter in Gemini is having that mutual reception opposite Mercury in Sagittarius, and they make a T-square to Saturn. And we couldn't let a chart where we're talking about all this aggression go without mentioning that Mars is currently in the early degrees of Leo, and it is making some harmonious contacts to both the north and the south node.
Mars is going to be retrograding next month. It's in pre-shadow already, as Mercury is also. We have two of the inner planets now preparing for retrograde season.
Yes.
Moon in Taurus and Uranus. That has been on our minds for the last podcast years. Uranus moving in Taurus and now connecting with this full moon. Of course, Taurus full moon, Taurus is stable, but Uranus is not. Uranus is really challenging us to change, to be flexible. And Taurus maybe don't want to do that flexibility, and maybe we just need to try to see, to look out of the box, to find new solutions. And it might feel uncomfortable because Taurus doesn't like that Uranian energy and surprises so much.
And I think that, like you mentioned, we've been dealing with the Taurus for a while, and periodically feeling that I need to release, I don't want to release, I want to hold on, kind of pressure. And now we have the moon bringing all this world of our emotions to the picture. And also, I feel like on the full moon in Taurus, I tend to do a lot of looking back, looking into what has been. We have a few years now, since 2018, that we can look back at the change that Uranus has wanted to bring to some area of our life that we either have worked with or resisted, or maybe a little of both. And the fact that it's on the star Algol, I don't work with the fixed stars as much as I'd like. I'm just starting to really incorporate them. But I've been following Algol a lot. To me, like when things hit there, it increases volatility, and it tends to focus our anger. What we're upset about, it all gets focused in, either correctly or incorrectly. Like we said earlier, it could be projection, or it could be the source of my anger, but that focusing it in, laser beam, and then that volatility happening, the combination of the moon, which can be very fluctuating, the energy of Uranus, which can be volatile in and of itself, and then that star, it just feels to me like a lot of energy of the volcano waiting to explode. Whether or not it does, it's still that tension of wanting to.
Yes, it's not an easy energy to navigate, but it's like you said earlier, the key is to be aware of that this is what we have. This is our cards at hand right now, and we need to try to understand them and work with them. And I think that with this Mars energy and levels, one thing is patience and hold your horses and try to really think before you're acting. Uranus can try to be flexible with Uranus. Yeah.
I also want to say that the fact that the oppositions to the sun in Scorpio, to me, can bring up a lot of I need to react or respond to the instability or the need to explode or whatever feels volatile in our lives. There can be the desire to want to respond with a scorpionic, let me control. And I don't see that happening here, because if it's making a sextile to Neptune, I feel like we have to release. We have to trust the universe. We have to let go of the need to be in control. Trust the process, especially with Neptune being in Pisces. This is where Faith has to drive the bus rather than logic. And it's also making that trine to Pluto, which, although trines can be lovely, it also can be a flow of energy. And if the flow of energy is the Plutonian side of fear, if the flow of energy is that Capricorn, I want to lock down and create structure so that I'm safe or I feel in control. Both words that to me, safety is about the moon, control is about that Scorpio sun, that all of the coping skills we usually use may not necessarily be working here. That this could be a time where things need to be volatile and we need to release the desire to control, to change it, or to try to make it feel the way it did a few months or a few years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hard work to do.
Yeah. Need to maybe be also a bit kind to ourselves that it might be not so easy to navigate this energy. And that's also all right.
And it may not be something that flows with grace. We may find that a lot of the energy pops and then we bring our conscious awareness and we pull it back down. We remember to slow down, we breathe, and then we might have another moment where we pop again. In other words, I don't think it's a I'm exploding or I'm calm. It could be a mixture of a little of this and a little of that. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of energy.
I think Mars is adding another layer to the same situation. When Mars is approaching retrograde season or when it's in the shadow phase, it's very important not to try to not to start or initiate fights or problems. It might be really testing in that area on an individual level and collective level, but really if you start those kind of processes, they might be very hard to solve. It might be good to try to give it some time, give the irritation some time until Mars has stopped its retrograde phase, and then proceed with what you want to do with the situation, but really to try to not too impulsively start up something that might be much bigger maybe than you thought it would. It's not easy, but it can be a very testing time.
Testing is a good word. I think too that it's interesting that Mars is now in Leo. It won't go retrograde until next month, but November, for the most part, has been part of that pre-shadow, as you were mentioning. A lot of what's happening this month may be planting the seeds of our discontent, as they say, the things that we are angry about inside, but the wanting to explode about it might not happen until next month after it's gone retrograde. And I think it can be useful to pay attention to what is it that gets your goat right now? What is it that is upsetting to you now? So that we can have awareness and start working on how do I embrace Neptune and release it? How do I become aware of that Pluto energy and not let my fears dictate my actions? Because it's going to only amp up between now and that point when it goes retrograde. And it's also making harmonious aspects to the nodal axis. On the opposite end, Venus is making hard aspects. Venus is making a T-square to that north and south node in Aries and Libra, which might mean that right now I'm not feeling connected to movement forward. I don't feel like I'm able to do. Maybe I'm having to take a step back to stop moving forward on that north node Aries energy of what I want to be creating in my life. We've been working for, a year and a half now on trying to get clarity on what it is the north node is calling us to step into. And this could be that momentary hurdle or obstacle. I can't seem to move forward. Venus is not bringing the attraction, the abundance, the smooth ride. This is where it gets bumpy. And we may have to be looking at how the past, South Node in Libra, is holding on to us or we're holding on to it. What is the thing I'm not releasing that stops me from moving forward?
Yeah, when Mars is doing the stressful aspects or the challenging aspects, then you get the energy to move forward towards the north node.
Yeah, I think if Mars was in a hard aspect and Venus was in a soft, it would feel easier to work with. There'd be that motivation to go. But instead it's that opposite. And I just think that with Mars making the harmonious aspects to the node, we have more of an ability to be angry that I'm not moving forward, and more likely to want to clear the air about past events, past relationships. I'm going to echo what you said earlier, that holding back, pulling in the reins, being aware of what we're upset about, and maybe recognizing, does it need to be addressed now, or is this something that can wait until we're on the other side of the Mercury and Mars retrogrades? That might be a time when we have more clarity and more control of our emotions about what we need to say or do. And then, of course, interesting that all this is happening while Jupiter and Mercury are opposing each other in each other's natal natural signs, mutual reception going on, which says to me it's going to be really hard to hold back. There may be a lot of biting the tongue to the point that we're drawing some blood, if you will, because I think it can be really hard that Jupiter wants to expand. It feels dramatic. I have to do this. I have to get these words out. And then with Mercury being in Sagittarius, most tactful sign to be in. Often we can see further into the distance, gain a great overall vision of where we want to be headed. But in terms of speaking our truth and speaking our mind, it can come out very blunt and very direct, which on top of all this other energy that feels like aggression piling up, it could just be that spark, not necessarily what we say or do, but how we said it or the timing. Not, as they say, not reading the room might be the fatal flaw that goes from having a conversation into an out-and-out argument.
And with this retrograde Mercury phase, there might maybe be even more misunderstandings, but still also we are going back to rewind some things during this season too with retrograding. But it's not that easy to handle either. We have like that opposition, then Mars and Pluto opposing each other with this. So we are working with two oppositions. So it really feels like we're going to be like going from one side to the other, trying to find a middle way somewhere.
I think too, some of what could be driving all these feelings isn't just the fact that life feels volatile or turbulent or it's changing. Some of this could also be coming from that Pluto is changing signs for the final time. Pluto is going into Aquarius. It's changing signs for the third and final time. It's here to stay now in Aquarius. No more retrograding back into Capricorn. I think that brings up a lot of energy. Anytime Pluto changes signs, we feel that shift. We're going from the energy of Capricorn of I have to wrap things up, I have to get something solid, I have to achieve success, I have to do the things that for the last 20 years I've been meaning to do. It's now or never. And at the same time, we have to let that go and step into the future, step into Aquarius, release our emotions, gain some objectivity, be able to see the bigger picture, rather think about the collective energy instead of my own personal energy, all these very Aquarian themes, but doing that shift when it's all been about what society thinks and my family thinks and the structure, when it's been about the path I take to get things done. Now it's suddenly going to be about where I need to be headed and the future, and that can feel very scary. And I think things also are going to start moving faster, more rapidity. Just watching what's happened with AI during Pluto's little transits, ingresses into Aquarius back and forth, we already have seen a lot happen. Now that it's here to stay, I think life, technology, everything is going to start moving much quicker. And that can also bring up this wanting to respond by what we know, clamping down, having control, creating a structure, when really, if that box didn't serve us, if that structure boxed us in instead of giving us freedom, it might be time to dismantle and take it apart. I think knowing that's what we're about to step into can, at least unconsciously, intensify the need to hold on to where I think it's almost like that life raft. I'm floating in the ocean and I need this life raft to keep me afloat. But really, we don't. We just need to embrace the energy that's coming in. But I think it could make us all feel very rocky, very raw. And then you add a layer of all these other things we're looking at on top of it. It does feel pretty explosive and volatile.
Absolutely agree with that. Don't know what to say, what more to say to that one.
And-
Going into Capricorn, maybe we start to get more practical about Venus. Maybe we're grounding a bit of it if we embrace the positive things with Capricorn, the mature Capricorn.
Yes. And this could also be saying with that Venus that we might be recognizing some of the tension could be helping us to recognize what we're not able to do on our own. And now it's time to reach out to teachers, mentors, guides. What do I need to learn so that I can develop the skill to complete this task or this goal or this accomplishment? I'm thinking this could be saying I need to be bringing in other people to help me on my path instead of the banging my head against the wall and not getting very far on my own.
Absolutely. But we are looking at some interesting weeks ahead with different energies and a lot to handle right now.
A lot to handle. Fortunately, the lunation's energy is only about a 1 to 2 period of energy, but then we have the next lunation. However, some of these energies like Mars opposite Pluto or Uranus, who moves slowly on Algol, some of these things aren't going to change overnight. They're going to be there in the next lunation as well. On the one hand, I think some of that energy of feeling explosive and feeling volatile may be there because we're open to our emotions right now and connected to them and bringing them up. Some of that could dissipate in 2 weeks, but some of it is also energy that's here to stay for us to learn how to work with. And I think you mentioned earlier, taking the that could feel like anger and aggression and recognizing how can I channel it in different ways? How can I make that motivation or passion? Might be some of the work we're doing as we finish out this year. That was our light and fluffy astro chat. Is there anything else about this chart you wanted to dive into?
I think we got enough right now.
Yeah, I think that's a lot to work with right there. Any
Yeah.
exciting ideas on tips or tricks on how to navigate some of these waters?
Nothing with working with Scorpio and Taurus, I think it's a good polarity to examine those feelings too. Like when they come up, like with the full moon, there's usually a lot of feeling and flow of that. Like really, what are these feelings I'm getting and how do I connect with them? Are there some feelings that surprise me? And why? How can I see this manifest in myself? Where do they come from and what might they mean for me? To try to find a solution to work with them. And how can I channel the energy? If I have a lot of energy, frustration, where do I want to put my energy in for my long-term goals, for example, and try to ground it?
I think I'm going to be focusing on expanding my emotional language, my words of emotion. A long time ago, I had a friend who was a counselor tell me that there's more than 3 emotions that we can have, but I only have 3 words for emotion. I'm happy, I'm sad, or I'm content. That was it. And I had to start developing a greater number of words and recognizing that there are layers to mad. Am I furious? Am I angry? Am I resentful? Am I maybe hurt? Expand it out. And I think with this tension between the Mercury and the Jupiter, it could be a really good time to practice that, since everything feels like it's stemming from that moon, from these emotions, talking about our feelings, whether it's to ourselves or to others. We can have the ability to communicate better because we're using a wider range of words that maybe convey what I'm feeling rather than sounding like merely attacking. That's going to be, I think, where I'm focusing, is really trying to embrace the Jupiter energy of not blowing up with my words, but expanding the number of words I have so that I can use them and be heard.
That's great. To gain a better understanding of the broadness of different feelings.
I'm going to wish you the best navigating these upcoming 2 weeks. And I hope that when we check in next time, Monica should be with us and the 3 of us can see Was it as rough as we are predicting, or did it go a little bit easier? And did these tips and tricks maybe help us navigate the rough patches along the way?
And please tell us your experiences in the comments. We can have a discussion on what's happening in your life.
Yes, absolutely. It's always good to know how these transits are affecting you and your charts. And of course, feel free to, if you listen to us on podcast, take a moment to rate and review us. It helps other people find their way to our chat. And if you watch us on YouTube, please hit the follow, the subscribe button, hit that bell, all those good things so that you'll be reminded when we're back in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you for joining us in this week's Astro Chat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. Astro Chat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support Astro Chat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.